In the previous module, we talked about how an editor can use synchronous sound to focus a viewer's attention on specific parts of the story and the scene. In this module, we'll be looking at 4 ways that you can use asynchronous or off-screen sound to tell rich and compelling stories. Now, there's only so much storytelling you can do with picture alone. Sound is often needed to clarify the meaning of a moment and provide contextual detail about the environment surrounding the characters. Sometimes, it won't even be possible to convey certain information without sound. For example, is that character just upset? Or upset and up to something? Is the weather outside warm and pleasant? Or hot and stifling? Your choice of sounds can dramatically affect not only the tone and emotion of a scene, but will also determine how well your audience understands the plot as it unfolds. Over the next few lessons, we're going to explore 4 ways that you can use asynchronous or off-screen sound in your cuts. First, you can use it throughout a film to motivate drama and pull the viewer forward in the story. Second, you can use asynchronous sound to create humor. Third, you can use asynchronous sound to simulate the supernatural. And fourth, you can use it to share very specific plot details with your audience. The really special thing about cutting asynchronous sound is that you're completely free of the sound-image connection. Your imagination can run wild, and your only limitation is staying true to the story the film is trying to tell. Alright, so let's begin with using off-screen sound to motivate drama. Motivating drama with sound is all about timing. Just as a character would react or respond to the dialogue of another character, they can react and respond to off-screen sound, affecting their actions, expressions, thoughts, and words. It's a cause and effect relationship that exists between the characters and their world. Sometimes this sound is written into the script as an actual event in the scene, like in this example from the 2007 film No Country for Old Men.
Do you have any idea how crazy you are?
You mean the nature of this conversation?
I mean the nature of you. You could have the money, Anton.
In this case, the sound written into the script was the phone ringing, followed by Wells looks at the phone, Sugar hasn't moved. Wells looks at Sugar, waiting for a decision, the low chug of the shotgun. The phone sound, which began as a startling off-screen noise, became the driver of the drama that followed. Here's another example of an off-screen sound that was written into a script to motivate the drama of a scene. This is from the 2007 film Atonement. The off-screen sound in this case is the buzzing of a wasp. You can see that it was specifically written into the script as a method of attracting the character's attention and drawing her to the window. Once there, she'll see her older sister flirting with a boy she has a crush on, which provides the foundation for conflict later in the film. Notice how the buzzing noise almost becomes part of the score as it comes and goes throughout the cut. At the end, it increases in volume, building tension into the climax of the scene, at which point it disappears completely. The buzzing of the wasp is the off-screen sound that initiates this chain of events, and it was deliberately added into the cut by the editor, per the instructions of the script. In examples like these, when your asynchronous sound is written into the script, your job as an editor is straightforward. It's basically paint by number. Just add the sound that the character is supposed to hear, and you're done. Someone else has already done the thinking about how the sound will serve as a storytelling cue and impact the world of the characters. Your biggest task is to make sure the sound feels like it's existing within the actual environment, which is usually accomplished with a bit of EQ work and a touch of very subtle reverb if the space calls for it. But sometimes your job isn't so easy. Sometimes off-screen sounds are not written into the script. Maybe the sounds are very subtle, or maybe they're needed more by the audience than by the characters in the film. Sometimes their purpose is to communicate something directly with the viewers themselves. Let's look at an example of using subtle off-screen sound to capture the attention of the viewer and clue them into what's happening. Here we have another moment from the film Atonement. The character Bryony is reading from a play she's written. While she's reading, another character, whom you might know better as Theon Greyjoy, enters the room, interrupting the reading.
This is the tale of spontaneous Arabella, who ran away with an extrinsic fellow. It grieved her parents to see their firstborn evanesce from her home to go to Eastbourne. Yes.
Nothing. Just thought I'd watch.
Based on the angle at which he's entering, Bryony can see him, but the viewer cannot. He's behind our field of vision. The addition of the creaks in the floor planks as he approaches,
Parents to see their firstborn evanesce from her home to go to Eastbourne.
and finally the squeak of the door as it opens,
Yes.
do a good job creating the disruptive moment from the vantage point of the female character. The audience is told with sound what the character in the film is experiencing visually. In addition to keeping the viewer informed, sound cues like these will go a long way in smoothing out the transitions between shots and scenes, making the cut flow all that much more smoothly. Always remember that you have this tool at your disposal. These little touches are deceptively simple and can easily be left out, most of the time to the detriment of the final product. In this lesson, we explored how you can use off-screen or asynchronous sound to motivate drama, either by informing the character, the viewer, or both. We looked at examples of asynchronous sound that were written into the script itself, and also examples of sound that were added by the editor for the purpose of clarifying the moment. Coming up in the next lesson, we'll look at how you can use asynchronous sound to create humor and simulate the supernatural. All right, I'll see you in a bit. Another use for asynchronous or off-screen sound is for creating humor, where the sound itself becomes a punchline or moment of levity. Let's have a look at an example found in a classic holiday film, A Christmas Story. It's Christmas Eve, and the parents are trying to convince the kids to get to bed before Santa shows up.
Oh, goodness, look at the time. I hope Santa hasn't had to pass up this house just because some boys weren't in bed when he came by.
Yeah, I thought I heard Santa's sleigh bells a little while ago going up the other side of the street.
All right, you two, upstairs.
Come on. Hip, 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 hip. Come on the double, on the double. Hip, hip, hip. Okay, let's get him.
The camera tracks the kids to the first landing of the stairs, where we hear their stomping footsteps and see them tackling each other, rushing to get up to bed. The sound-image connection is established here, so that when the camera cuts back to the parents' reactions, As they listen to the commotion being caused by the kids, we no longer need to actually see the children to understand what's going on. At this point, an editor is completely free to add as much or as little off-screen banging, stomping, slamming, and crashing as they want.
Okay, let's get it.
All you need to do is adjust the timing of the reaction shot to support the sound. Another example of humor being created with off-screen sound is in this scene from the film Forrest Gump.
Oh, hey! Well, ow! Lieutenant Dan!
Lieutenant Dan's wheelchair is sliding down an icy sidewalk and disappears screen right. We cut to a reaction shot of Forrest while we hear the crash of the wheelchair into what sounds like garbage cans and bottles,
Lieutenant Dan!
along with a yell from Lieutenant Dan just to ice the cake.
Lieutenant Dan!
This use of off-screen sound works great for two reasons. First, it saves money in a production because there's no need to film a stunt performer crashing into the garbage cans. This is where it's great to have an editor or someone who can think like one present on the production in the early stages. Second, this particular way of playing out this gag is arguably funnier than if the filmmaker had chosen to show the crash and use synchronous sound. Staying on Forrest's startled reaction is great, and no one really wants to see someone in a wheelchair get hurt. Not really great from a comedy standpoint. So far, we've looked at how you can use asynchronous sound to motivate drama and create humor. Well, you can also use asynchronous sound to simulate the supernatural. A great example of this is in the film Oculus. In this scene, we see the father who appears to be hearing something. Turns out, it's the haunted mirror in his office. Happens all the time, right? Have a look.
Okay. Big time.
Director and editor Mike Flanagan used a surreal, whispery piece of asynchronous sound to simulate the voices he was hearing. It's present throughout other scenes in the movie to indicate the presence of this supernatural being, such as here, and here. As an editor, you've got the power to take a relatively normal moment and completely fabricate the presence of something that did not originally exist on the set. Not only will this save quite a bit of money in the budget, but often a menacing or creepy sound is actually far scarier than the actual sight of what's making it.
Who's there?
Many times, it's the fear of the unknown doing most of the work. Alright, so let's quickly recap what we learned in this lesson. We explored the use of sound to create a bit of humor and levity, and we looked at how asynchronous sound can be used to simulate the supernatural or any other creature or character that might not be visible to the viewer. Coming up in the next lesson, we're going to look at an extremely powerful use of off-screen sound, how an editor might reveal meaningful and important plot developments using only a few tiny pieces of audio. Alright, I'll see you in a bit. One of the most powerful uses of asynchronous sound is for sharing very specific and meaningful plot developments with your audience. Let's dig right into an example. In this scene from the 2017 spy film Atomic Blonde, starring Charlize Theron, we've got a moment where her character has a gun to the head of a woman she suspects might be following her. Have a look.
Why the gun, Delphine?
You're not as well disguised as you may think. I know who you are. You're Lorraine Broughton, MI6, and you're here because of the death of Gascoigne.
What do you know about Gascoigne?
Nothing. But if someone is killing Allied officers, shouldn't we all care? Whatever's in that list has people willing to kill for it.
Alright, so the tension in this moment was pretty high. The viewer is wondering if Charlize is going to let the woman go or kill her on the spot. Supporting that tension is the close-up camera shot we're in, as we can see the subtle facial expressions of each character, and of course, if Charlize does shoot the other woman, we've got a front row seat, which could be somewhat jarring and graphic. Fortunately for everyone, it seems like Charlize might believe what the other woman's saying, and starts to lower the gun, but because no one says anything, the tension is still present. Charlize is still making her final decision about this woman. It's very possible that she could make a split-second decision not to trust her and surprise the audience by quickly raising the gun back up and pulling the trigger. Because we're in a moment of relative quiet, where no one is speaking, and the background ambience is muffled, it's a perfect opportunity to fully diffuse the tension with sound. Just for fun, let's add the sound of a door being opened off-screen. As someone else enters the room. Now obviously, these sounds were not part of the original film scene. If the editor had chosen to add them like we did here, the moment between the two women would have been interrupted, and Charlize would not have had the chance to make a final decision about this other woman. That would be a meaningful occurrence in the story, because it would carry this unresolved conflict forward as a loose end to be addressed later. In the actual movie, the filmmaker wanted to fully resolve the matter here. As the gun is lowered, and we're still wondering if it'll come back up and shoot the woman in question, we hear the sound of the hammer disengage as the gun is uncocked.
Whatever's in that list has people willing to kill for it.
This one subtle sound effect completely resolves the tension of the moment. Once we hear it, we know Charlize has no intention of firing the gun, and she must now at least have some level of trust in the other character. As a plot development, we can now expect them to work together a bit. That's a lot of information to convey in a fraction of a second with one sound. In this lesson, we looked at how an editor might use off-screen sound to reveal important plot developments. And we compared how different off-screen sounds in this situation might have substantially altered the meaning of the scene. Coming up in the next module, we'll be giving you an editing demonstration as we craft an invisible narrative with sound. We'll be showing you how to use all the skills that we've discussed in an actual scene. This one's a lot of fun. I'll see you in a bit.